Okay, my people, welcome back to the studio. I am here with Jesse Harless. You are now on your official 1 minute countdown. So I want to give you fair warning. If you don't have a pen and paper nearby, grab it now. We have some good stuff to share with you. And you guys know how we do. In the studio, we believe in delivering some things you can build with and build on for a thriving life. So you're on the 32nd wind up. So as you are doing whatever you need to do, if you need to grab a beverage or just stand up and take a break, if you've been sitting all morning, please feel free to do that. And we are going to be starting in just a few moments. Jesse, thank you for coming in. It is great to see you, my brother.
Great to see you too. Excited to be here.
Okay. All right. So wherever you are coming in from, I'm going to ask that you do me this favor. If you are coming to us or you're watching this from Facebook, if you're watching it on LinkedIn, if you're watching it on YouTube, just hit us in the comments. Let me know. Go ahead and blast that chat for me and let us know where you're from. If you're listening live, let us know, hey, I'm in here with you guys live for the first time. Let us know you're here and that you are ready for this conversation today. I know I certainly am. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this music down here. So welcome wherever you are from. I am thrilled to the gills to have this conversation and to welcome to the studio Jesse Harless, who is, not only do I have the privilege of calling him a friend and a soul brother from another mother, for real. But Jesse is also someone who is doing some very crucial work around recovery. Now, for those of you that have been seeing the promo post for today's studio conversation, as you know, here in the studio, May is Recovery and Reclamation Month. Now, if you look this up anywhere else, you won't see it. It's in the studio. So I created it just for us. And I wanted us to have conversations this month. And I have another one coming up for you later in the month on the 28th. But we're going to kick it off with Jesse talking about the journey of recovery, talking about what is the nature of addiction, what do we mean by recovery? And if you watched and saw my post last night, you saw I said recovery is for everyone. So Jesse is going to kind of break that conversation open for us a little bit so that we can all enjoy the warmth of that perspective. So before we get too far into this, I just want to say, wherever you're coming in from, go ahead and post. Hey, get into the conversation with us. This is not Sage on the stage. You guys know how we do. This is a participatory dialogue. So Jesse and I are here on the screen, but you all are just as critical and crucial to this conversation. Thank you for that thumbs up. Critical and crucial to the conversation. So go ahead and let us know if you have any greetings, any questions, anything like that in the chat. And I will go ahead and let Jesse know as we're coming through. Thank you, Mr. B, coming in from Orlando. Love it. Welcome. So as you have greetings for folks, questions for Jesse, questions for each other, or just things that you want to share, go ahead and blast that chat. Good to see you. Good to see you, Dr. Z, coming in all the way from the UK. Welcome aboard. Okay, my folks. Okay, my people. I want to make sure that if you're here, you know you're in the right room. The Practicing Positivity Studio, this is a living learning lab. It's a shared dynamic space where we can come in and really look at some tools to build a lifelong practice of nurturing the life-giving forces in and all around us. Now, notice that life-giving forces in and around us. So here we really do take seriously and we prioritize all of the power that is within you, and recognize that if we're going to build lasting lasting legacies of thriving and flourishing, it's an inside job. It starts within and we build out. So come on in here, bring your full self. When we're in this space, our goal is to discover, to uncover, to pull back the curtains on those things that give us life, those things that give us vitality, and those things that restore a sense of zest to what it is that we call life. So that said, with all of that buildup, here's my man. So look, today's Learning Lab is focused on Jesse Harless. You know, we talked about his book, but this is really about, this guy has some stuff to share with you that I'm over the moon. So the name of the book is If Not You, Then Who? Check the subtitle, my people. Harness your strengths to shift from addiction to abundance. So Jesse, let me just kind of ask you to take a minute to introduce yourself. And I want you to introduce yourself in the context of the title of this book is like a hurricane. It is powerful. So talk to me about, and talk to the folks that are listening in with us about who you are in the context of why this book, why this title, and what is it that you want to do in the world?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Nicole. And can you hear me okay? I sound good out there?
Great.
Okay.
Sound is great.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to connect with you today about such an important topic to myself, and I think to many others during this time, coming into 2021, already into May. So my name is Jesse Harless, and I'm an author, I'm a facilitator, I am a fears coach, and I'm really just someone who's trying to live his best life on the other side of mental health conditions and addiction. And that's really where my mission is today, is to really help people to elevate their lives so that whether they're lost, stuck, lacking direction, to gain clarity in order to live a life of purpose. So that's really was kind of the mission behind what I've started, and the mission behind the book was really to share my message of my story that includes the pain, that includes the trauma, that includes the recovery. And most importantly, to share a recovery toolkit so that you not only have the story, which the stories are powerful, stories matter. And to me, stories are a matter of life and death. So sharing that story was important. I knew that, but more importantly, it was to share a toolkit that I could share with you wherever you are, so that you could start to learn tools that I've learned to thrive and to take what you need and to leave the rest.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Jesse. So here's where I'd love to start, everybody. And those of you that are listening in, whether you're listening on the replay or you're live, I want you to just take a second and think about this. What is recovery? Why would the statement recovery is for everyone, how could that be a truism, right? How could that be? So I want to give you a few minutes just to jot that down. What is it that I think recovery is? And here's the key question, you all. What and who is recovery for? What do I think recovery is? And who is recovery for? So take a second to just jot down your initial thoughts about that, what you're thinking about that. And in a second, Jesse, that's where I really want to kick off the conversation. For those of you that have worked with me or you've heard me speak, I've kind of the dictionary has become my best friend all of a sudden. So I always love to start off with really talking about what we're talking about. So Jesse, let me have you start by simply saying, okay, when we're talking about recovery, and recovery could be for everyone, how could that be? What is recovery, and even what is addiction? However you want to enter or jump in that conversation, hit it.
Yeah, so I look at things not unlike many people, believe it or not, have a similar view of this. It's just harder to find these people. But I'll tell you that if you just look at the definition of recovery, that is by SAMHSA, the recovery definition from them is recovery is a process of change and with individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. So think about that definition of recovery right there. What is that saying? Is that saying I'm stopping my food addiction? Does that say that I'm stopping my alcohol consumption? Does that say I'm stopping my need to control others or to live angrily each day? Because these are all types of addictions. So that doesn't say any of that. It says to live a self-directed life, to live, to try to strive to reach our full potential, and health and wellness. So I think we need to redefine what recovery is, or look at some of the existing definitions that serve. And I think that's one that does. And when I think about addiction, addiction is something that we might think of addiction and think of the person who's the alcoholic or the person who is the addict. But that's not what addiction is. Addiction is, and this definition was not created by me, but the definition that I like is addiction is any behavior that you do repeatedly that has a negative consequence. So when you think of that definition, you might think of yourself and say, okay, with that definition, like I realize that I overspend. I get myself into debt. I'm doing debting, I self-debt. And you might be thinking all these different ways that maybe, at night I'm eating a bunch of snacks to help me numb out at night to kind of forget I have to go to work the next day. So whatever it is for you, that is addiction. And so I wanted to just share that so that you have this kind of baseline of where we're going to go today in this conversation.
So for folks, as you're listening in, this is what I would love to do. Listen, check this out. You want to be writing this down. And when I say check this out, I mean check yourself. Check you. As Jesse is laying down the definition of recovery, i.e. living, and I could only pull out a piece of it, Jesse, but I will follow up with him and get that definition from Sansa and post it on the Facebook page and the YouTube page for your reference. But this notion of recovery is living a self-directed life. And addiction, something you do repeatedly that has a negative consequence. If you feel it, if you can do it, post in the chat. What are some of the addictions that you have seen yourself engage in? Let me talk to you right now about coffee. Jesse and I were laughing about this yesterday. If you talk to me about entering any day without my cup of coffee, you see a whole different Nicole, and it is not practicing positivity, Nicole, either. And don't try and take my salty potato chips at night either. So go ahead and let us know as you're talking about addiction. And if it's something else, please don't put anything inside of this comment field that you would not want to come back to you later, okay? That you would have a problem with that, but write it for yourself. Because this is a conversation that we want to be real and right now relevant, not conceptual, not ideological or theoretical. That's what I mean. We want this to be real and right now relevant for you. So Jesse, real quick, before we go any further, I do want to welcome all of my peer recovery specialist folks, all of my folks that are rocking their recovery. You have transformed your life and you are living it. All of my folks that are responsible as an executive director, as a program manager, as a coach. Your job is to help people thrive or to remember that they can. You are an honored guest and welcome in this conversation. So as Jesse is speaking, as I'm asking questions, you feel free to drop your knowledge bombs and your wisdom nuggets inside of this chat for the benefit of the other folks that are observing as well, if you would, please. And again, hands on my heart, I welcome you to this dialogue and thank you for being here. So, Shelley, I see you. So important to look not only at recovery from addiction to substances, but also those behaviors that don't serve us well. Come on, my sister, bring it from Mesa County. Absolutely. So, Jesse, as we're entering into this terrain now, this expanded terrain that you just set up for us about what recovery is and what addiction is, these repeated behaviors that have a negative consequence. So talk to me now. I do want people to have a sense of your journey, to have a sense of how you came to what you've learned now about recovery. And of course, we're going to be building up to the Fears Toolkit, but I want people to get a sense of what's some of the background there.
Yeah, so my background originates with most people was trauma in childhood. And people have a definition of trauma sometimes that maybe also needs to be looked at, that trauma can be your best friend moving away. Trauma can be you're forced to stop sucking your thumb at 6 years old, and that was your safe coping mechanism for pain. Trauma is many different things. And for me, the original trauma, one of them was my father leaving at 4 years old. He was an alcoholic. You can call him, he was a drug addict, an alcoholic. Not terms I really care to use, but they do serve in certain instances. But that's what he was. And he, at 4 years old, he left. He was in a car accident, was in a coma for 22 days. He had brain damage permanently. And, so you could just say I lost my dad at 4. And my mom, with 3 boys on her own, there was a real struggle there. So what ended up happening was just, that's kind of the original wound. And from there, I fell into different types of addiction. My first drug was fantasy. That's the thing I say. My first drug was fantasy. And when I say that, what I mean is I found ways to numb out with the computer, with different ways on the computer, whether that was internet gaming or whether that was internet pornography. These are ways that I numbed out with fantasy. And then eventually when I got to college, high school was a very traumatizing time as well. And a lot of this was, of course, self-created, because that's usually what it is. It was self-created in my own mind. There was things that were happening. I was bullied at one point, but there was a lot of things that were self-created. And I was really operating from the wound itself. And when I got to college, I hit all the jackpots in college. I got arrested by a state trooper. I got caught for plagiarism. I got caught in a dorm drinking, and I had to take alcohol classes. I failed all my classes. And so flunked out of school. My father passes away, even though we had no communication for like 16 years. He passed away from alcoholism. And when that happened, the night he passed away, I used cocaine for the first time, and I felt love for the first time. It sounds strange, doesn't it? But that's what happened. That's the experience of what I thought what love would be like. And I chased it for the next couple of years, and it led me down a really dark path. And I put a line in the sand, and I crossed it by 10 feet, things I said I would never do. And then at 22, I was arrested with federal felonies, very serious charges for my addiction to opioids. Yes, and that's when things started. That's when my recovery began, was December 18th of 2005. That's when it began.
Okay. So I want to ask you something that as I was reading your book, and even as you were recounting that story, you said something that really made me think. Sometimes we get clues along the way, but there are moments where life gives us like the unequivocal, like moment of truth. And as you're thinking about what helped you start on your recovery journey, not when you were soaring with it, but when you were like, oh, maybe I should try something else. Like, what was that moment, that initial moment of clarity?
Well, I think for me, the initial moment was so extreme. And I want to really put it out there that a lot of times it's not so extreme. It's subtle. It's a subtle knowing on the inside. And sometimes it's a diagnosis. Sometimes you go to the doctors and it's a diagnosis and you're like, okay, I got to do something now. But sometimes it's more of just like an emotional bottom. For me, it was an everything bottom. It was all the bottoms I could hit, because I was facing to spend my 20s in prison. So it was something of extreme example. But what ended up happening though was what I realized very early on was the power of connection. I realized the power of connection, because one of the great gifts of my first month in the recovery journey was meeting my friend Bonnie, who is a therapist. And that therapist held the space like no other human being had ever held. And this person was not operating from the wound itself. This was a person holding space for me to just share. And that healed me and began to heal me as I shared all these things with her, and began to realize the power of connection, the power of building a support team, the power of building a recovery team. And I learned that very early on, which is a very important lesson, that no matter what you define as your addiction, to have a support team of connection where you can share your true, authentic self with, all the weird stuff about yourself that you're ashamed about, that is very, very key and critical to progressing in recovery. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
See, can I jump in right there real quick? You guys, I really want to highlight this because Jesse said something that was so crucial. No matter what you say your addiction is, you assess your addiction is consciously building a network of positive support around you where you can be authentic, where the people that you are putting inside of this circle of support for you, that they can be heart open, eyes open, mind open, just completely there for you. They can be completely there for you on the other side of that addiction. And Jesse, if I'm speaking out of school, you let me know and you clear it up and clean it up, okay?
Oh, you're right on the money. You're good.
Okay. So the other piece that I want to make sure that you guys are getting in on this, and just hit me in the chat and let me know if you're making notes in your notebook. Like, yes, I see a place where I could go to work, and I see I might need to do some tinkering with the circle of support that I have around me. I might, or create a circle of support to assist me. So if that's you, if you're starting to, if this is ringing some bells for you, just post in the chat, man, yes, I'm there. Yes, I'm in. Okay. Yes, I'm in. Just let us know this is resonating for you no matter where you are with this. Jesse, I want to ask you to come back to something. You said a piece about you noticed that out of everything that was happening, it's not that the stuff wasn't real, but what it kind of, how it set a life for you, that was self-created. I want you to unpack that self-created piece, because I want us to talk about power, one's own power to change their world. So talk to me about that piece about, hey, these were self-created things, and how that impacted you and how you changed it.
Yeah. So when I think about let's just put it this way. When I think about our intrinsic soul value, the value we have at the essence of ourself, at the soul level, we all have that. So what that means is, how do we use the past as a way that doesn't define us, but as a way that instructs us to see the false beliefs growing up that were instilled upon us, and be able to realize that it's not just us, it's other people in the world also having false belief about those things. And then really looking and saying, wow, I see that I have a lot of false beliefs that I am actually projecting upon others and myself. And so being able to see that at the soul level, at the intrinsic level of ourself and who we really are, we are already whole. So it's really a matter of looking at, like, how do I create from that place? Instead of starting from a place of lack and scarcity, how about I start from a place that I have a full heart? I already have everything I need inside of me. And now I can bring out these strengths, the strengths that I use to get through the things that I've been through in my life, the challenging circumstances with my children, the challenging circumstances with my spouse, the challenging circumstances with my childhood, and use that as strengths to be able to self-create a life that we start to enjoy. We wake up to and we say, I'm glad to wake up today. And I'm glad that this is a day that I can co-create, that I can use the gifts that I've been given while I'm learning. I'm always learning and not being attached to results, just learning, being in a state of constant learning and authentic curiosity. So I think that's where we can create or self-create or co-create, is from that place of curiosity.
So you just said so much that I absolutely love. I just put a hashtag in and I didn't do it right, you guys. Hashtag authentic curiosity. So this whole piece about, Jesse, what I love about what you just broke down, I don't know about you all, but when people say take responsibility, I have a reaction to that. And I have a reaction, as I think about somebody like my mother, who was raising my sister and I by herself, was doing the best that she could. And I was like, and doing a fantastic job, an evangelist. Was, by the time I was in high school, she was an educator. She started her own business. She started a number of businesses. It's like, how much more responsible could somebody be? So it's like, that's not a blanket statement. But what I love about what you said, taking responsibility is kind of like taking all of that authorship, all of that power, all of that self-determination, and taking it all back and beginning to look at you first and saying, hey, what's live and what's Memorex? What's giving me something to really live a life with, and what's draining my energy away, the false beliefs or those life-giving beliefs. And then starting on this path of learning. So starting on this life of authentic curiosity. So Jesse, I would love to, as asking, do my beliefs serve me? Mr. B just put into the chat, and I think that is right on, Mr. B. I would love to, that's exactly where I was going, Jesse, is for you to say, what were some of the practical things that you did that exemplified living authentic curiosity? And let this be the buildup to us talking about your fears framework and how people can use it to truly recover.
Well, I think early on, what I realized was that by sharing my story, by starting to share the shameful parts about my story and the things that I didn't want to take a look at, I started to realize that those things became a physical manifestation of dis-ease in my body and in my mind, and manifested into severe anxiety and mental health conditions. But when I started to share the shame, I started to share this with safe people and being authentic to myself, by sharing my authentic self and being with an integrity with myself, that these things started to not be boulders weighing me down like a backpack full of boulders I was carrying around. As I shared each of these shameful things that I deemed shameful about myself or my past actions, or even just about self in general, I just started to take one boulder off at a time, and the weight got lighter and lighter. And I started to let go of some of these things, this displaced energy that was manifesting as severe anxiety and panic disorder. And it started to go away. And I realized that there's a power in sharing your story with someone who's safe, to be able to share that past, those things that you repress, that you say, that's not a big deal. People have way bigger problems. Well, actually it is. The fact that you're just saying that is telling me that there is something deeper there, and it is good to go there. And so to me today, I didn't have this clarity in the beginning, but for me today, it's about feeling my feelings. It's about, I'm willing to feel the pain today, because if I'm willing to do that, I'm willing to not get it stuck. And so it freezes and I never get to deal with it. And then it manifests as numbing out behaviors. So
wait a minute, Jess, hold it. Now, did y'all hear that? The continuum, because that was some powerful, powerful stuff. Not being able to share the shame in a safe space allows that shame to set in the body and create an environment of dis-ease. And then I heard you say that then it has to get out somehow. So it can get enacted in behaviors of numbing out, behaviors of overspending, behaviors of overeating, right? Am I following that?
That's exactly, yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, guys, I just did not want you to miss that. That continuum is powerful. Feeling my feelings and sharing in safe space. Feeling my feelings and sharing in safe space. Two key building blocks. Please continue, Jesse. I just could not let that pass.
Yeah, so I mean, that's really where a place that I've got to, as I've moved along this journey, and I realized that I started to mistake success as being something of an external outcome being achieved. That was a mistake. There's nothing wrong with that, to have goals. But what I realized, that the real thing I wanted was to feel loved, was to feel safe, was to feel okay. Yeah. And that's actually what I was chasing in a lot of these external goals and things that I was putting outside of myself. And I just realized today that the more I go into those feelings and the more I really take a look at like, oh, I'm angry at this person, and realize that anger is not necessarily anything they're doing. It's actually your inner child upset at you for not taking care of your inner child. So these are reflections that I've been diving deeper into today. And it's stuff that in the book, I dive into a little bit about forgiveness, you know, gratitude and forgiveness, and things that are really key for us to start to realize what is really blocking us. What is really blocking us from our full potential? What is really blocking us from writing that blog, writing that book, starting that side business, going all in? Like, what is it really? And it's not lack of skill or training. That stuff can come along to help you at something, but it's really our own self-beliefs or false beliefs about ourselves and not feeling our feelings. Because when we start to feel that the whole way through, we start to realize like, oh, I have the confidence. I have what I need to get started today on this endeavor that I've been putting off for so long. And when we don't work on our dreams, when we don't work on the things that are calling us since we were young, saying, please get out into nature, please go out and create that business, go out and, you know, do those things that your heart desires. When you start to do the things that make your heart sing, you start to realize that, oh my God, like there's a whole new world out there, and that can happen at any age. And so that's really what I'm learning today. So I'm just sharing some learnings that are coming in.
Yes. Now, I do want to get to your fears toolkit, but I'd love for you to come back and underscore gratitude and forgiveness. They're much like addiction and recovery. There are a lot of definitions about that. How would you say those two things, how do you conceive of them as a way that's really supported your recovery process and really your thriving in life?
Well, I think gratitude is so underrated. I think just taking a few minutes every single morning, and this is part of the toolkit that I have, having a gratitude practice every morning, meaning you just write down 3 things or 5 things that you're grateful for, and then you write what you love and appreciate about yourself. So this is a practice you can start to do every single morning. So that's why I recommend having some type of planner or journal that you physically write in every day. I know we're in a world of digital everything, and that's great. I have a beautiful digital account. I love it, but I still have something I write in every day. There's something therapeutic about writing and journaling. So being able to write out what you're grateful for before your day starts. And that could be, if you're like, well, I have nothing going good in my life. If you're breathing and you're listening to this, you have more than most people in the world. So that's something to be grateful for. If you're able to listen to this, that's something you should be grateful for. Yes. So these are the simple gratitudes. And then from there, you know, forgiveness is a bigger player that comes along, maybe not in the beginning of the recovery journey, but as you're getting into it, that forgiveness is key. It's the forgiveness of yourself, which can take the most time, but it's the forgiveness of my father who left at 4. It's the forgiveness of my mother who was incredibly strong and worked full-time, 2 jobs to support her kids. But also the resentment of her leaving my dad, you know, even though he had an addiction, there was a resentment there against her that she did that. So there was things that I had to release and forgive for me to start to be able to give away things that I had to others. You can't give away something you don't have. So if you don't forgive, you can't give that away. And so when I forgive, I'm able to do that. And I'm not perfect. This is a journey. It's a journey of discovery. And so forgiveness is very, very powerful and profound, and it should be done alone, but then also with a safe person in time when the pain gets too great.
I love that. I love how you were talking about forgiveness too, in the context of, you know, this shift from addiction to abundance. The one element of that forgiveness piece is there are things releasing is as important as the things that you add, you know, and that seems obvious, but as we're really getting into some of this deep inner territory, it's also releasing some of those things that may be, and it's not just habitually, like in the case of your mother, if there's so much shame associated with the resentment that you have with your mother, it's hard to let all of that go, right? To really untie the knot, to say it can be both and. My mom was incredibly strong, incredibly committed and resourceful. And dang, I really wish she just would have let dad stay. That, like you said, the child within says, no matter what, I want to hold on to my support systems. So I love what you're saying about the power of releasing to help us facilitate that shift from addiction to abundance. So Jesse, let me do this because I think I've mentioned maybe 15 times. Y'all listening out there could tell me if it's been more than 15. But I want you to talk about this toolkit because again, this is about putting things in the hands of the folks that are watching that will help them make this shift for themselves.
Yeah. So in the book, I put in the book a toolkit, and I call it Fears Recovery Toolkit. And I called it Fears intentionally because a lot of times I think we think that fear is a negative thing. Yes, fear can have a low vibration or however you want to frame it, but fear can also be a great gift. And one of my mentors, Janai, says that what's in the way is the way. What's in the way is the way. So sometimes it's about facing your fear, and what we fear the most is often what we need to face the most. So this is something that I wanted to take into this toolkit, which is the Fears Recovery Toolkit. And what this toolkit really is, it's focus, elevate, appreciate, resilience, self-care. Those are elements that I found to be critically important for recovery. And I mean, remember what recovery means. Recovery is all of us, all 6-7 billion humans on this earth.
Can you give us the acronym one more time, Jesse?
Yes. So the acronym is focus, elevate, appreciate, resilience, self-care. Okay. And so if you were thinking of your recovery from whatever it is, it could be recovery from power, could be recovery from fear, could be recovery from control, could be recovery from alcohol or shopping, whatever it is for you, codependency. You can think of it as focus on your recovery, elevate your recovery, appreciate your recovery, resilience in your recovery, and self-care and recovery. So we can frame it from that lens. And inside of that are 30 action steps. And these 30 action steps are what helped me. It's things that I've practiced. It's things that I've helped others to use. And it's things that a lot of them are universal principles and ideas that I've synthesized from mentors that I've had for myself and created this toolkit because I believe that we all have the God-given right to thrive in this earth. So I believe that the tools that I've put in this toolkit, these actions, can help you to do that. If you were to follow this roadmap, it will help you to get there, and you'll find even other tools as well as you're on that journey. But this is one to really get you going and practice over a year's time.
I love it. Now, so I want to make sure you guys are picking this up because this is truly phenomenal. I know I'm taking good notes, and I've dog-eared my book and all of that stuff in as much as you can in Kindle. So I just want you all to, as you're thinking about this, focus, elevate, appreciate, resilience, and self-care. Remember earlier in our conversation, we asked you to write down what's real and relevant right now for you. Is there an area that, again, remembering that definition of addiction, something that I repeatedly do that has negative consequences, then how might this fears framework, like how could you situate that thing around that addiction that you've identified for yourself? So if you're picking up what Jesse's putting down, just let us know in the chat. Again, give us that hashtag all in. I am in the space. I am in this conversation. So Jesse, as people are, kind of beginning to make these connections in their own mind between, again, the pathway between addiction and abundance, I'd love to hear you are doing this work all over the country. So I want to have you I want you to talk about this at two levels. You're also a coach. How do you use this one-on-one with people? How might folks, again, if there are some ways that you can open it up so people can use it for themselves? And then I want you to talk about your national work, the work that you're doing with organizations literally across the country right now to start a movement around recovery and resilience. So you can start anywhere, end anywhere. I gave you, 5 million square yards to work in. So you start wherever you want, end wherever you want.
Yeah. So the Fears Recovery Toolkit, I mean, this is something that is something that I've been using absolutely with one-on-one, even in group settings, to be able to help people journey through their version of recovery. And I think this is important.
Yes.
Recovery looks different for everyone. There's no blank statement. You can't blanket recovery. So there's all these pathways to recovery, and honoring all of them is the key that I found, because what people have to really understand is we lost 89,000 people last year to overdose. So you have to understand that we need more holistic pathways to recovery in order to tackle this behemoth of an opioid crisis and things that are happening in our world. And it's not just opioids, it's alcohol now, it's food. There's big things happening since the beginning of COVID that has been really butting its head right now. Mental health is on the decline like it never has been. So we have to really look at, like, what are the ways that we can create healthy, sustainable recovery? And so for each person, it's different. So for me, I chose to use a way to get into focusing on your recovery. What is your why? What is your purpose? What is your why? Is it for your child? Is it for your husband? Is it for yourself? Is it for your higher source? What is it? And who's on that recovery team? And how are you going to focus on your recovery today by writing down your recovery actions every day? You know, so I go through this process with people one-on-one, and then elevating your recovery, right? It's about reading 5 pages a day from an inspired text, watching a documentary or YouTube that inspires you, or a speaker, or a podcast. And then it's about finding your mentors. Who are your mentors? You might have a couple mentors in your life right now, but you could have 50 by the end of your life. You could have 100. So finding people that you can add value to, that you can learn from, visualizing your future, visualizing your day, seeing that future self emerging, and then writing it down and setting intentions. So this process of fears is these action steps that lead into health and wellness, that lead into living that self-directed life, which could lead into being an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, either one, whatever benefits you, as long as you're honoring yourself and being able to, you know, show up as your best self every day. And so this is really what I do, is I take people through that process one-on-one. I do it in group settings. And then, you know, so the work that I'm doing today with facilitation is really showing people a way. And we have a mutual, you know, training we went through called Exchange. An Exchange approach gave us tools to unlock the collective strengths and to unlock the collective wisdom of any system, of any group. And so for me, those groups could look very different. It could be a group of entrepreneurs. It could be a group of people at a recovery drug court. It could be people at a treatment center, at a sober living residence, all over. So I'm able today to work and train peer recovery coaches, professional coaches through the ICF that have recovery certifications, or even just entrepreneurs, because at this time, we're spending a lot of time with our families, and that's causing a lot of extra stress, and how to manage that. So some people are finding ways to numb out more. So there's all different walks of life and ways to facilitate, you know, and I hope that was clear. I mean, there's more I could talk about with facilitation, of course, but.
Well, one of the things that I'd love to do as people are thinking about this, I asked Jesse that question at multiple levels because I wanted to get you thinking at multiple levels, wherever you are in your world. So I want you certainly to take this in for you, nourish your own self, but then be thinking about what is the network, or what's the community that I'm in, where someone partnering up with someone like Jesse to deliver this in the community could make an impact, could make a difference. So that's where I want people thinking about. And Jesse, I'd love to have you, if you feel comfortable sharing it, some of the work that you've done with folks statewide, for example, statewide recovery communities around how do we actually then take the state and take the network that we have, and how do we really bolster our ability to be able to create these kinds of outcomes that you're talking about across our state, if you feel comfortable sharing some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2019, what happened was, the CEO of the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse, Neil Campbell, reached out to me and said, I'd like to have a conversation about you because I know you're trained in facilitation, appreciative inquiry, you have recovery experience, you have this background of coaching and different things. But what I'm really interested in is you have facilitation experience with exchange and appreciative inquiry. And she said, I would love to bring you out to Georgia to train some leaders to see how that will work, and then we'll go from there. And so I got flown out to Atlanta in 2019 in October, and I trained 9 of their leaders at the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse into the art of facilitation, leadership, and really focusing on resilience and elevating their life. So like these are topics that are touched in the book, and I did that live in person for 6 hours. Well, the result of that was Neil asked me, they brought their counsel in and said, would you facilitate an event with the whole state of Georgia's recovery community organizations? So 34 organizations covering the entire state of Georgia, which is free recovery services, by the way. These are nonprofits that provide free recovery services to the state. So these are vital organizations that we need in every single state. And so Georgia, so basically they hired me to run an event, and I ran this event, and it was to connect all these recovery, so a system. So let's just say I was working with a whole system, a network, and I had them tune into their purpose. What is the purpose? What is the why for this network? What is the why? What is the strengths of this network? And most importantly, what are the most important strategic initiatives for 2020? Now, we didn't know COVID was coming. So the strategic initiatives were things like transportation, marketing our recovery community organizations. How do we provide services? How do we help domestic violence? How do we put all of this in together? Yes. And so this is what happened. And they ended up hiring me to work with them throughout 2020 to be able to coach their train their peer recovery coaches in the art of facilitation of workshops that they could deliver, and also into personal growth and self-care. And so that's what happened. And then COVID hit. And so everything ended up being on Zoom. And we ran at least 12 events with probably 600 people throughout the state of Georgia. So I was really blessed to see how a state can unify their services that are free to be able to impact thousands and thousands of people that are struggling with mental health conditions and recovery with no cost of services to them. And it's really a beautiful art and a science to see how that was done in Georgia. And so I was blessed to be one of the facilitators, to be brought into that community, to see like this is possible throughout the entire country. We can be doing this in every single state. And that's the message, that if someone's listening, that is already happening in Georgia. And if you'd like to get connected to them, reach out to me, and we could show you how to start to build recovery community organizations throughout your state and start to equip the leaders, the executive directors, with tools for them to continue to grow and expand and even receive funding, and how that works. So that's some of the work that I was blessed to do in Georgia. I'm still in contact with them now, and we're seeing what's coming next. And because there's all new challenges that we're facing now.
That's right. So Jesse, first of all, before we get away from this, how can people be in touch with you? If this is really triggering some things off for them, which I hope we're starting a July 4th fireworks of new ideas and what's possible for you wherever you are. And you heard Jesse say he was able to do this work thanks to COVID virtually. So there's no geographic boundary. Jesse, how can they get in touch with you if they want to continue that specific conversation with you?
Yeah, they can just send me an email, jesse@jesseharless.com, or go to jesseharless.com and you can check me out there and reach out. That's probably the best way.
Okay. So I'm going to say, hold on. And it's jesse@jesseharless.com.
Yes.
Excellent. So if you're looking to stay in touch with Jesse, if you're looking to do some idea storming with Jesse about where you are, and you're seeing the need is there, and you're also seeing or sensing that the energy is there to do something big, check him out. Check him out. So Jesse, here's what I'd love to do. We've got about 10 minutes left. So what I'd love to have you speak about and talk about a bit is, okay, so now that I've got this framework in place, I just want to be, this is actually, and let me rewind in my own mind. This is what I really want you to speak to. Jesse, what's the question that you'd want to pose to folks out there based on your experience? based on what you've learned over your own recovery journey, based on the work that you've now done with communities around the country, and the movement that you are starting so that recovery really is accessible in a meaningful and powerful way to everyone. What's the question that you want to ask folks that are watching this for them to begin their own journey, their own shift from addiction to abundance? What's the thing that you'd want to share with them?
Well, I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, ask yourself this: where are you at in your own life's path and journey with honoring your true self and living your full potential? So that's the question. And when you answer that question, give yourself some time. Maybe even take a moment to do some heart-focused breathing before you answer the question. And allow your heart more than your mind to help you to answer this question so that you can start to be led on a journey that maybe you've been waiting to do your whole life. Here's the most beautiful thing. It's just coming into my mind right now is when I was in Mexico before COVID for the Heart Math Conference, and I sat next to a gentleman, and this gentleman was 78 years old. And we had a conversation, and he told me about a book and a process he was doing and about his life and as an entrepreneur. And I'm just like, dude, you inspired me like no other person I've ever met. And this guy has visions and dreams for his 80s, because now he's in his 80s.
Wow.
That he's just getting started. He's just getting started. And that's the type of attitude I want you to start to have. Stop putting limitations with age. Stop putting limitations with felony charges. Stop putting limitations to education. It's out there. It's out there. It's just start to, ask yourself that question about how can I be led to start to honor my true self, to reach my full potential? What does that mean to me? And maybe it is reaching out to Dr. Nicole and asking for help and more information. Maybe it is reaching out to me. Whatever it is for you, today's the day. The time is now. It's never been like it is now. So that's the message I would leave with people, is that today is the day. It's now. And you can start right now, wherever you're at, and start to make that progress towards your recovery journey, your purpose journey, whatever journey that you're on right now. But just know that there might be subtle things blocking you, and it is possible for you to work through those and live your best life.
Now, Jesse, I'm putting some of these life-giving questions, I'm actually putting them in the chat so that you can come back and you can write those questions in your journal and you can begin the inner inquiry. So there are two, Jesse and I were laughing. We're both riffers, like we're natural flobies, like we can just go with the flow. So there are a couple of things, Jesse, that I would love for you to share if you're comfortable. One is I have a lot of folks that come in and listen to Practicing Positivity that work with other folks to help them be able to take their next steps in terms of economic self-sufficiency. Some are re-entering society from incarceration. Some are, they're coaching folks, young folks, teaching them life skills. So what would be, as you're thinking about the Fears Toolkit, is there a specific thing that you could pull out to say, and you've given us a few, but is there one that you could either highlight or a new one? If you're in that kind of job, if that's what you're doing, you're really touching people in that way. Here's what's one thing that you could put in their back pocket, even before they go and buy the book and get access to the whole toolkit, that you would suggest that they could drop in the helping process right there that could really give a boost to the folks that they're serving.
Yeah, I think what could really help is if you're coming from any of these places you described, no matter where you are, you're a super resilient person. Just know this. The strength that's universal amongst people who have overcome addiction, mental health conditions, incarceration, is resilience. So I want you to really sit with that resilience that you have that's innate. And I want you then to ask yourself the question, when is a time in my life when I overcame some type of adversity, hardship, or challenge. What happened? And what did I do to bounce back from it? And I want you to look at that story and say, oh my God, I'm stronger than I've ever imagined myself to be. I've overcome things that no matter what comes at me now, it's not going to take me down. So that's really where to ask yourself that question. And that's a question you could bring to your clients. That's a question you can bring to the people you serve. And then allow them the space, give them a few minutes, 3 to 4 minutes to journal that question. And then after that question, ask them, hey, what were the strengths that you used? What were the strengths that you used to overcome that hardship, challenge, or adversity? What were those strengths? Because you didn't do it just by osmosis and just randomness. No, you did it by harnessing strengths. Maybe it was your intuitiveness. Maybe it was your empathy. Maybe it was your compassion. Maybe it was your determination. Maybe it was your artistic creativity. But what was it that you used? And so I would say, as someone who is working with others, to bring a good question to them that's generative is very powerful. We don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but I can ask really great questions. And that's how I crowdsource the recovery toolkit. If you want to know how I have the phase recovery toolkit, I ask great questions. And those questions led to a toolkit. And I crowdsource these questions at all the places I described earlier. And I got answers and I said, wow, there's some power to this. And that's how I knew that this could help others. And so start to do that yourself. Take your creativeness, bring it out to the world, test it out, see how it works. That's your system. Build your curriculum, bring it to the people.
Oh, come on, man. Come on. Okay. Now we've got 5 minutes left, Jesse. This is the bomb diggity that I wanted to you to be able to share with people. You mentioned heart-centered breathing. What's a practice? Is it heart-centered breathing, or is it something else that people can incorporate relatively easily into their lives to help them kind of, a mentor of mine says, turn down the volume on some of, say, the negative, the shame talk, the I can't talk, I've messed up too many times talk, and be able to even engage some of the questions that you just laid out, generative questions that can help them, again, make that shift to abundance.
Yeah, definitely. Self-regulation is the key. Self-regulation is the key, whether you're starting out your journey in recovery or while you're CEO of a Fortune 15 company, doesn't matter. It's self-regulation. So self-regulation tools, like, let's just go with heart-centered breathing. So before you actually answer that question, before you go and respond to your manager who's treating you poorly, before you respond to your child, take a moment to put your hands on your heart, because what we do is we stay in our head. Even with meditation, we do it in our head. See, we need to bring this down to the body. The body has incredible intelligence. So when we start to focus on our body and we start to maybe even place a hand on the heart, and we say, I'm going to go ahead and just focus on my heart while I practice deep breathing. And I'm going to practice breathing in for 5 seconds, holding it for 7 seconds, and letting it out for 5 seconds. Doing that for 2 minutes to be able to reset yourself, to get centered before you respond, before you react, and before you start to move forward on your endeavors to create your curriculum and your creations for the world. Take a moment to pause, because those insights and clarity that come from the body are going to be very helpful to inform what you're going to do next. And it took me a long time, folks, to understand what I'm telling you right now. I was in my head in my recovery journey for over 10 years, in my head, my whole life in my head. And when I started to learn the power of the body and in my heart and bringing that attention down here, energy flows where attention goes. So as you start to focus on your heart and your energy starts to flow downwards, you start to receive new insights from your intuition. And this can be really powerful to inform your business or your practices or your coaching.
Okay, you guys, I'm putting this in because I really want to make sure that you catch this. This stuff is life changing. So this abundance practice, this piece that helps shuttle you from addiction to abundance, from feeling, all over the place, scattered, lost, unanchored, untethered, to being solid, grounded, and rooted and clear. It's in 2 things that Jesse just mentioned that are life-changing: the power of the pause and the power of the breath. And when you know how to combine the two, what he just said was you now open yourself not just to the intellect of the mind, what you know, but you open yourself to the intellect of your whole, the wisdom of your whole being. And just by the way, when you open yourself up at the level of your whole being, you start to pull in wisdom from others around you, wisdom even from nature around you. You start to have things open up for you that were completely inaccessible before. This is not woo woo. We're actually at a place in our human history where we can measure this kind of outcome that we're talking about. So I'm going to put it in the chat. Use the power of the pause and the power of the breath. And breathing in 5 seconds, holding it for 7 seconds, breathing out for 5 seconds, holding it for 7 seconds, then do the thing, or then respond to the thing. Okay. So, Jesse, we have got 1 minute left. I want to give you, my man, the last word here. Actually, that's not totally true. So let me say right now, you guys, it has been such a blessing to have you, Jesse Harless. And here's what I want to say to you. For every trauma that occurred that you transformed into a lesson learned, for every shortcoming and every time you fell that you kept getting up, for every time that you were extended grace and you paid it forward, I want to say thank you. Thank you for taking everything that you have, everything that's happened, and turning it into a gift for the world. So thank you for doing the work. Thank you for opening your heart. And thank you for opening your mouth to share it with those of us wherever we are. We've got folks coming in from Florida, the UK, Colorado. So, and that's just with us live. For those of you that'll watch this in the replay, let us know in the comments where you're coming from and let us know how you are going to make this shift from addiction to abundance. Jesse, now I can give you the final word.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for those words. And that really hit me in the heart. I really appreciate your words. And yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me today on your show. And you know, I think we've said so many great things today, and I think like I'm feeling good about this. I think this is going to be something that can cause a ripple, and that's what life's about. It's about, you know, saying one thing to someone that, you know, when they are asking for it or holding space and just being a deep listener, that causes a ripple for their day. And so, you know, thank you for this, and this being a ripple for my day. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Jesse. So as you all go ahead, and we want you to obviously re-enter the day taking all of the wisdom, the love that was generated here, and taking those notes that you wrote down just for you. Take them to heart. As you enter into this weekend, we wish you a fabulous weekend, a fabulous Friday. And we will be back in the studio on the 28th with Father Kevin Green. We're going to continue our theme, Recovery and Reclaiming, by focusing on your health and connecting that to your spiritual center. So you are not going to you're not going to want to miss that conversation either. So Jesse, once again, thank you so much. And I did fib. I really didn't give you the last word. I think I'm incapable of doing that.
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and we will see you next time in the studio. Go ahead and blow up that comments field. Let us know on Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you are watching, YouTube, that this was a blessing for you, because that's why we're here. Thank you so much, and don't forget to subscribe. I want to keep building you up. All right, thanks so much, Jess. I will talk with you soon. I will see you all back in the studio in a couple of weeks. Be well.